episode because I'm getting quite a lot of questions at the moment from people who have been through a narcissistic relationship and who have got children. And you will know I've done many other videos around a child's trauma response to the narcissistic parent. But a lot of people are contacting me recently that they have adult children. And what do they do when their children are adults? And a number of things are coming up like this. And I'm thinking of a couple of messages in particular recently where the couple have a child and the child or adult, because they're in their 20s, is now living with the narcissistic parent. And the mum or the dad who isn't the narcissist is really concerned and wondering, do I say something to the adult child in this situation? Wondering whether to warn the adult child, whether to say something, because very often the adult child, particularly if they go on and live with the narcissistic parent, almost takes your place. So it can be so difficult for you, having been that person, the person being abused in that relationship. You are now out of that, and that's obviously a good thing. But what you can see then is your adult child is almost taking your place. And that can be triggering for you in a number of ways. One, I am a bad mum or a bad father. My child is still in that situation. Lots of feelings of guilt, feelings of shame. And it can really highlight some of your own wounds too. And I suppose I wanted to do this episode really to give you some strategy and some advice of what you can do if you do find yourself in that situation where you are separated parents, you have adult children, you know, and even if one of your adult children then goes on and lives with the narcissist as well, you know, what do you do? Do you say something? Do you try and, you know, take them to one side, take them out for lunch or dinner and warn them and say, you know, your father, your mother is a narcissist and you need to be mindful of that, and you almost try and teach them some strategies. Now, the problem with this is, and think back to when you were in that relationship with a narcissist too, if someone had said to you, hey, I think your partner, your wife, your husband is a narcissist, I'm going to give you some advice about how to handle that and how to get away from that, what do you think you would have said? Now, the likelihood is you would have probably ignored it, you wouldn't have believed it, and you'd have probably pushed that person away even more. And the number of reasons for that, remember, how we act and behave is always based on what our system thinks is the safest for us. That is why, and again, I've done other episodes on this, we can't ever say to somebody, just leave, just ignore. It's a lot more complicated than that. So wherever you are right now, and that includes your adult child, however they are showing up, behaving like, they are doing that because their system believes it's the safest for them to stay like that. Now, if you think about it, and this goes back to some of the episodes I've done about younger children, when they go and stay with the narcissistic parent, how they react, where they're going to freeze very often, fawning when they're with the narcissistic parent because they're trying to please the abuser. They're trying to be almost submissive because their system thinks if I do this, it will be safer to do that. Then when they come back to you as the non-narcissistic parent, they're very angry. They might be more aggressive around things. And that in itself can make it really challenging for you. And the reason why it's really challenging for you, because it almost looks like they are more full of energy, aggression, anger when they're with you than when they're with the non-narcissistic parent. And that is so prevalent when we think about younger children. And again, I just want to reassure you, if you're listening to this and you do have younger children and you think, well, yes, they're very compliant when they're with my ex-partner who's the narcissist, and then with me, they're, you know, I get the tears, I get the anxiety, I get the anger, I get the aggression. It's actually because they feel safer with you. And I use a ladder, really, a ladder of tolerance to explain how and why people react the way that they do with trauma responses. And actually, we feel safe and connected. Then we have the fight and flight, and then we have the freeze. And it's always in that order. We don't kind of skip. It might be seconds going through it like that, but it actually is. If you look on a ladder, we feel safe and connected at the top of the ladder. We're in fight and flies in the middle of the ladder, and then we're in freeze. And we'll go up and down like that. And the least safe our system feels is like we're at the bottom of the ladder. We're in freeze. We're in, this survival mode. And that's often what your children are like when they're with the narcissistic parent. When they come back to you and they start to move up the ladder, they start to feel safer, then they can be more angry and aggressive and anxious. And that, to an outsider, looks like someone is behaving in a certain way. And this can be very, very true for adult children. So if you imagine, if you are parents of adult children and your adult children are very much conversing, very much involved with the narcissistic parent, even maybe living with them, you going in and trying to warn them, they're not going to be able to receive that information because their system is in full-blown safety. Now, if they're carrying self-worthiness wounds of not feeling worthy or good enough, maybe because of their family dynamic growing up with having a narcissistic parent, their system is all about protecting from feeling that core sort of self-worthiness wound. So the adult child, same as younger children, will have these protector parts that will come up. Normally things like people pleasing, fawning to the abuser, in the hope that if I please and fawn the abuser, then surely their behavior, their abuse will diminish, it will lessen, and my system can go back to feeling safer again. And it doesn't actually trigger the core self-worthiness wound of, say, not being good enough. So if you steam in and actually speak to your adult child in this scenario, the likelihood is that that child, the adult, is going to push you away. They're not open to listening to that. They are in full-blown survival safety mode. And you have to remember, and it's the same if when we say to people who are in domestically abusive relationships, just leave then. If you don't leave, your system feels even more of a failure, feels even weaker, even more powerless. So actually, by you trying to warn your adult child about the narcissist, their mother or their father, their system, because it won't actually come away from the narcissist, they will potentially still stay there. Their system will feel even more worthless, even more not good enough, even weaker, even more powerless. So actually what you are going to do if you do that with an adult child is you're going to actually push them even further down the ladder, away from feeling safe, further to feeling danger, threat, survival. So if we know that we can't warn them, and I know that is a natural instinct as a parent, that's what we want to do, right? But doing that in this situation will actually push your adult child further away. And it will also mean your child will feel even worse about the situation on a deep level. So what I would advise that you do, and this is the same for adult children, is just focus on your relationship with them. You cannot change the narcissist, and I'm sure you already know that. And you can't change or help an adult child to see what maybe you took a long time to see as well. They have to be ready to do that. And they may never be ready. And that's something, again, we need to process as a parent. But what you can do, and really the only thing that you can do to protect you and to protect your relationship with your adult child, is stay in your lane and just really, really focus on your relationship with your adult child. Now that can be difficult, obviously, because potentially there could be psychological or emotional abuse going on. But the more you can be open, the more you can be non-judgmental, coming from a place of your true self, being compassionate, and this is all internal family system stuff here. If you can sit in a place of coming from your true self, even if you can see what is happening, it won't trigger your self-worthiness wounds that of I'm not a good enough parent. You can stay in your true self and actually just be there in a non-judgmental and compassionate way for your adult child. This really leaves the door open for them, because at any stage, because it might be now, it might be 5 years, 10 years, it could even be 20 years before they actually realize this. If they feel like they can't come back to you because there's that fear that they already feel like a failure because they haven't been listening to you all of that time, then they just will keep silent and they will isolate themselves from you. So if you want to up level your relationship with your adult child, even though they're having a relationship with a narcissistic parent or even living with them, what you have to do is stay in your lane. You need to focus on how can you make your relationship with your adult child as thriving and flourishing as possible, totally separately to whatever is going on. And the moment your adult child may say something that has happened with the narcissist, rather than jumping in and saying things like, they did that to me, or yes, that's because they are a narcissist, start to ask some key questions to them. How does that make you feel when they do that? Why do you think they do that? So rather than you jumping in and really demonizing the other parent, okay, because this could just be in that moment, and if you do that, you're going to close the door again. If you ask key questions coming from a place of your true self, what you're doing is you're helping the adult child process this and come to their own conclusions and decisions themselves. That is what you want. You want them to create new neural pathways of curiosity. You know, why is it I feel like this when I'm living with mum or dad? Why do I feel like that? And then you can be there just asking those questions, listening. And your adult child, if they know that you are not judgmental, that you are compassionate, that you will always be there regardless, that you see them as being amazing and good enough and worthy simply for being who they are, not for what they are, not I'm going to love you less because you're living with the narcissistic parent, that simply your love for them is unconditional. Unconditional. Now, when I say unconditional, I just want to put a caveat here. If they are living with the narcissistic parent and they are then by nature abusing you as the adult child, because sometimes adult children will turn into narcissists too, you still need to have your boundaries. And even if your child does turn out to be a narcissist, which can be so challenging, I hear you, you can still try and maintain the best relationship you can as mother and father with that child. And I want you to think of it like this. I want you to think about every night when you go to bed and you're cleaning your teeth and you're looking in that mirror, that you can look yourself in the eye and you know that you are being the best parent you can possibly be within the situation. Okay. And it's really key to have within that situation, because sometimes you're trying to be the best parent you want to be. If you've got a situation with a child who is a narcissist, an adult child who's a narcissist, or they're living with a narcissist and they are being more abusive or aggressive to you, okay, you still need to have your boundaries as an adult, and you still need to set those parameters of what is acceptable and what isn't. So you need to be able to look yourself in the mirror and know, hey, my adult child is living with a narcissistic parent. They are starting to treat me like this. How can I still be the best mother or father knowing that they are behaving like that? That's the key here. Now, what can happen with this is sometimes a sense of grief and loss can come up, because that means that you have to come to a place of acceptance of the relationship you have with your adult child is maybe not the relationship you would have ever dreamed or hoped for to have with your adult child. And that in itself can bring up some grief and some loss. And I would say that's where your inner wounds are coming up, because it is that sense of loss of what you would love it to have been like, your marriage or your childhood or your relationship with your children, and you know that it isn't like that. That can be challenging. So I just really invite you, if that is you and you're really struggling with that, that's where it really highlights some inner work for you to do. And it's finding a place of acceptance, not because it's okay and you're absolutely fine with it, but it's finding a place of acceptance within your system to know, yes, my life, my world is like this, and it's not what I would have wanted it to be like, but I have a whole world ahead of me and a whole load of stuff that I can focus on. So we don't just focus on the can'ts, the have-nots, the relationships that we don't have. What we do is we want to focus on what we do have and focus on the relationships that we can thrive and flourish and have the best level of relationships that we possibly can with those. So I hope that's really helped those of you who, you know, maybe you've gone through a divorce, you've broken up from your ex-partner and you have adult children together. I hope that's given you a semblance of some advice, some, strategy for you to be able to utilize that, and to know that if your relationship with your child isn't what you would love it to be, that isn't your fault. It is how it is because of circumstance, but that doesn't mean you still can't be the best parent you can possibly be within the parameters of what life has sadly thrown at you. So let me know if you're using any of these strategies. Let me know how you get on. Maybe you've got adult children. Let me know how that feels, and maybe, any responses or comments that you can give me around this will give me ideas to do another episode around all of this, so I can maybe go deeper into this for you to help support you in this situation, because I know it can be really, really challenging. But this is about your life and you living your best life within the parameters and challenges that you have as well. So take care and lots of love.